A dangerous and tense situation is still going on between India and Pakistan, though a ceasefire was declared on the 10th of May, which was violated soon after. This started after India's airstrikes into Pakistan on the 7th of May, 2 weeks after a disgusting terrorist attack on India's Kashmir, in which Hindu men were singled out and killed in front of their wives, their children, and their families. Is there a new, even more radical Pakistan emerging at this time under their current army chief, who has pushed religion into their military and has made extremely provocative speeches on their religious supremacy? Why was this terrorism carried out so openly in the name of Islam at this time? Now, what does this current ceasefire mean, especially the way it was done with American intervention? And can any long-lasting peace happen anytime soon for India? To talk more on this, we have with us today a very special guest, former Indian Ambassador and former Consul General to Pakistan, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, who is also a regular speaker on Primetime TV and has written several books on India-Pakistan issue. Hello, all of you, and welcome to another episode of Jaya Talk Show.
General Munir has a reputation of extreme religious views and extreme religious meanings. But he's not the only one. Director General of ISI, his father was a nuclear scientist and he was in close contact with Osama bin Laden. In fact, CIA and FBI caught him, took him to America, interrogated him to find out from him the extent of his relationship or dealings with Osama bin Laden. So that is the second. This is the Director General of ISI, who is now also the National Security Advisor of Pakistan. They were hostile personally to Mrs. Gandhi and they were hostile to India's planning. And they were encouraging countries like China to start a diversionary move so that India would be hampered. And they sent their own 7th Fleet to what became Bangladesh. So despite that, Mrs. Gandhi stood firm. And that is one of the proudest moments in Indian independent history. Not only were Pakistani terrorists there in that picture, mourning the dead, but there was the entire military brass, the administration, the police, top leaders, they were all there. Now Pakistan says, and it says it to the world, that we don't care. They are our boys. We have nurtured them, we support them, we finance them. And if they have been killed, we are going to be there at their funeral. To hell with you and to hell with your morality.
What do you think of America brokering a ceasefire when we have a Shimla agreement, and we have been very emphatic about the fact that we do not allow a third party to mediate anything between India and Pakistan? How do you see this?
There's a perception which seems to be gaining ground, not just in India but outside also, that what was the 3-day conflict for? Have we achieved the objectives? After Prime Minister Modi made a statement in Bihar, in a place called Madhubani, where he had set out those objectives. So the questions are being asked whether we have achieved them, and if not, whether it encourages Pakistan to become even more aggressive. In the history of the world, there has never been a treaty as generous as Indus Waters Treaty, where a country is virtually made to give almost the entire waters of 6 rivers to the downstream country, in this case Pakistan. What to do with a problem called Maria? So you can paraphrase it, what to do with a problem called Pakistan.
Before we start, I want to tell something to the audience, an anecdote. I have to start with this. I had wanted this interview on the Tuesday, and you said, wait till Friday because something big is about to happen. When everyone was saying, no worries, nothing is going to happen. And I was also about to write, I don't think much is going to happen. You said, wait till the weekend for this interview. That night, things started, and I was just awestruck. Were you seeing the future? How did you do it? I'll have to tell this to to the audience because I was just amazed.
Well, right away, I must tell you, I'm not an astrologer. But what I do have is experience of many years of diplomacy, of meeting world leaders, of knowing how their mind works, especially in Pakistan. So you have to have your sense of the trigger. By that, I mean that what is the starting point? What is that first irritation that brings two nations to a conflict situation? So I could sense already on Tuesday, as you mentioned, I could sense that something was going to go not in the right direction.
Huge respect for you for that. And on that, we will start this. I'll come to the ceasefire, but before that, I want to start with something fundamental. After the Pahalgam attack, immediately India talked about stopping the Indus water. And people were saying it was actually just a notional gesture, it doesn't mean anything. Immediately Pakistan said we are threatened that we are going to put nuclear strikes, and then they said blood will flow on the streets, this, that, and other. After that, India went ahead and did even more. They went and did something never that has been done. They struck 9 sites of their terrorist camps and then went on to strike their military locations. Nothing happened in terms of nuclear, but they kept on threatening that we have called our NCA, who is the head of nuclear arsenal, etc. But nothing happened. They have agreed to a ceasefire now. We don't know how long it would exist, but we know that they have agreed. So they are trying to water it down. So apart from everything else, do you think a bubble has been burst in terms of them threatening with nuclear strikes? No matter what we do, you cannot touch us because we will strike first, according to our doctrine. This is a bubble that has been burst not just for the sake of India, but for the sake of the rest of the world. That Pakistan is also not going to do it and stake their own country.
Well, that's a very, very long, complicated question. I would also like to talk about Indus Waters Treaty. But since you focused on the nuclear issue, I think much of the world does not realize what exactly is meant by nuclear issue, what exactly is meant by a nuclear bomb strike. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were long back, 2 generations and more have gone since then. No one in his right mind would even think of pressing the button, a nuclear button which gives the command. But then not everyone in the world is in right mind. If a country is led by generals, then the risks are so much greater. And Pakistan has a sort of declared policy that there are a couple of parameters where they will use the nuclear option. Now, the second thing is that what does nuclear option mean? Because since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the technology has developed tremendously. It's not just the bomb. The bomb also has increased in sophistication and size, but there are also smaller nukes which are called tactical nukes.
That's right.
These as some of the Pakistani ministers are fond of saying, can range from cricket ball to football. So they can be fitted on a tank or an artillery gun. And they are given in charge of a brigadier level officer on the front line. So what happens? Supposing there's a particularly angry brigadier who faces an opposing Indian army, if he has got a stomach upset or if he's fought with his wife, he can very well direct his people, the tank operator or whatever, to lob a tactical nuke across to the Indian side.
Now, do you think if they can do it without the direction coming from the top level, they would risk doing that?
Well, this is my book, Wartime. where I have given the entire scenario. And to answer your question, yes. And I'll give you a practical example. There was a Pakistani military attaché in Delhi who, for some reason, had decided that it did not like India. So when he went back and he was posted on their side of the Siachen, that means the slopes facing the Siachen. As a brigadier, he had a certain number of people under his command. And one day, he decided that he's going to capture Siachen.
Really?
Without informing anyone. This is not the first time that there was an apprehension that the generals ruling Pakistan could reach for the nuclear button. In fact, there have been 9 occasions in the past where there was an actual fear. For example, when Clinton called Nawaz Sharif during the Kargil crisis, yes. Ultimately, when he could not persuade him and he got so frustrated, he told him, "Are you aware, Prime Minister, that your generals are preparing to launch a nuclear strike?"
Really?
The
Prime Minister did not know that his generals were preparing this on their own.
Once again in this book, it's written in black and white. The generals there have a command structure of their own, which includes the entire country. So they don't have to consult the Prime Minister or the figurehead president. They decide, and then after the action, they may or may not inform the Prime Minister that we've launched a nuclear strike. So
you are saying that there is actually still a genuine threat that any type of nuclear attack can come from Pakistan from the lower levels or higher levels, or in a completely disengaged way, in whatever way, and we all need to be actually quite worried and aware of that.
Yes, Pakistan is a worrying country. When it can worry.
Okay. This is because it looked like it is a bluff, because they have still not done anything, and we have done way more than we ever thought we could. And perhaps it's something that is just a bluff.
Yeah, I hope I could agree with you, but I'm sorry to differ.
Okay, it is good to know an honest answer like that, instead of being too positive about it.
In fact, there's a lot of need for the world to be very worried about it.
What do you think of this current ceasefire? First of all, I'll come to the way it was done, that the information came not from India or Pakistan, but from the president of US. Trump tweeted it, that I have brokered it, and taking a lot of credit for it. Pakistan went on to say, thank you, America. India did not mention America's name, but they said that they have talked to Pakistan and agreed to it. But it was all over the media, even Indian media, that it was President Trump and Marco Rubio who had a night-long talk to broker this. Now, what do you think of America brokering a ceasefire when we have a Shimla agreement where we have been very emphatic about the fact that we do not allow a third party to mediate anything between India and Pakistan? How do you see this?
Well, exactly. That has been the Indian policy right from the beginning, that we do not encourage, and as you put it, we do not allow mediation by a third party in any matter which we think can be settled bilaterally with another country.
That's right.
Pakistan. But there's also the fact that during the Balakot crisis, President Trump, he was in meeting the North Korean leader Kim at that time, I think in Singapore or someplace. So from there, he worked the telephones and brought down the temperature and spoke about it, that look, I've done it. So it's not as if
Trump... But during Balakot also, India said we will not allow American intervention. We will do it the way we want. We will do the ceasefire the way we want.
Exactly. But they also did not refuse to take telephone calls from President Trump.
Do you think it watered down India's position? Because even under very difficult circumstances like the Kargil war and even before during the 71 war, India made it very clear that we will not allow a foreign intervention or a foreign dealing of the ceasefire. We will take decisions the way we want it.
Well, 71 is a good example because 71, both Kissinger and Nixon at that time tried their best to, come in the way of India's aspirations, activities, and plans in every which way possible. They were hostile. They were hostile personally to Mrs. Gandhi, and they were hostile to India's planning. And they were encouraging countries like China to start a diversionary move so that India would be hampered. And they sent their own 7th Fleet to what became Bangladesh. So despite that, Mrs. Gandhi stood firm. And, that is one of the proudest moments in Indian independent history. It was a remarkable feat of diplomacy. It was a remarkable assertion of India's military power. And India was successful in achieving whatever objectives it had set out to achieve. And India had the international opinion with it. Mrs. Gandhi and her colleagues, ministerial and diplomatic colleagues, ensured that the world understood India's message and India's apprehensions on this issue. So that I think is a lesson both in diplomacy, military strategy, and extremely wise leadership of Mrs. Gandhi.
So would you be okay to say that perhaps India should have stood its stance and at least made it at a time when they could say that, okay, we have agreed for the ceasefire, and not America coming in and saying that we have done the job for India and told India and Pakistan to stop the war?
Well, I must say, Jaya, you are persistent. So you're provoking me. And it's not for me to say one thing or the other in answer to your question.
It is just your own opinion.
It is the perception which seems to be gaining ground, not just in India, but outside also, that what was the 3-day conflict for? Have we achieved the objectives? After Prime Minister Modi made a statement in Bihar, in a place called Madhubani, where he had set out those objectives. So the questions are being asked whether we have achieved them, and if not, whether it encourages Pakistan to become even more aggressive.
That's right. So in that context, I would also like to ask you, what is your sense of the ceasefire? Is it at all going to exist? People were saying it is the shortest ceasefire that was actually brokered by Trump or anybody in the world. Do you think there is going to be any ceasefire at all?
Well, yesterday I was quoting in one of those television programs that Ronald Reagan had famously said, trust but verify. Pakistan, in the very first instance, has broken the trust by breaking the ceasefire. They started breaking it, I think, within 3 hours. So I do not instinctively feel that Pakistan will live up to what it has promised.
Since your instincts are very, very sharp, I would like to ask you, do you think something bad is going to happen, something flaring up is going to happen by tonight?
I hope not by tonight, because tomorrow morning, tomorrow at 12 o'clock, the two DGMOs are going to talk to each other. So I think they'll be cautious. Pakistan will be cautious for messaging to the outside world that, look, we've been good boys, don't blame us. So I don't think it's tonight. But what could provoke Pakistan is that their many demands are not met. For example, Indus Waters Treaty.
I'll come to that question. Actually, there's a particular question on that, and I'll come to that. Before that, I want to ask you this. I'll come to the question of General Asim Munir. And many times it is said that a country's history, its future can be changed by just one person and very quickly. So it is said that General Asim Munir is a very unusual chief of army staff, where he has got a very fanatical religious outlook. I mean, though other people have had enmity with India, including General Pervez Musharraf and General Bajwa, they didn't have that fanatic religious outlook. They were more secular, and he has also come not from the elite military academy, but from the what they call is as the officers training school. The only such parallel is General Zia, who also came from officers training school and had a very fanatic outlook of religion towards his foreign policy and his internal policy. And we all know how that played out between India and Pakistan, as well as Pakistan's own economy, Pakistan's own progress. Do you foresee a different Pakistan today with General Asim Munir, and there is going to be a huge skirmish in coming times between India and Pakistan, which we need to brace for?
Well, you've done your research on generals very well. Talking of General Bajwa, Munir's predecessor, I'll give you two instances of his decision making and of his responses. First is Kartarpur Sahib corridor. It was General Bajwa's initiative to start that corridor, and that was very unusual for a military man to do. The second is when one of our missiles, by mistake,
That's right,
went into Pakistan.
Mm.
Had it been the present army chief, meaning Munir, God only knows how Pakistan would have reacted. Probably he would have asked for missiles to be launched immediately without waiting for any by your leave or any such thing. But Bajwa kept his cool. He did not let that mistake by someone in India at a very, very junior level to become a flashpoint between the two countries. Even the Balakot thing, it was Bajwa who told the National Assembly of Pakistan that let's release the Indian pilot who's in our custody, otherwise things could go in an undesirable direction. So that is one army chief. As far as the present army chief is concerned, you're very right that he has, that's why he's called Mullah Munir at some time in some places and by some people. I will not use that term, but General Munir has a reputation of extreme religious views and extreme religious leanings. But he's not the only one. The Director General of ISI, his father was a nuclear scientist and he was in close contact with Osama bin Laden. In fact, CIA and FBI caught him, took him to America, interrogated him to find out from him the extent of his relationship or dealings with Osama bin Laden. So that is the second. This is the Director General of ISI, who's now also the National Security Advisor of Pakistan. The third prominent person is the Director General of what is called the ISPR, the person you see on the media giving out army viewpoints as a spokesperson. So he's also a Lieutenant General. His father was a preacher in a mosque, and he also held a position as Lieutenant General in the army. In one of those positions, he invited Hafiz Saeed to talk to his officers, the entire officers of a corps, running into thousands, about his philosophy of how religion should interact with the army. So you have three persons of prime importance who are at the top in Pakistan Army, whose views are identical and whose views seem to be equally radical. So you have there is a problem on our hands. And there's a problem on Pakistani hands. The Pakistani
That's right.
people.
That's right. So we are expecting to see more of this. I mean, we are not expecting to see peace anytime soon. Would you say that?
Well, let me give you the example of terrorism. For 35 years, Pakistan has profited from terrorism, from America, as I told you, with respect to Afghanistan. But it has also profited, it feels, by leading India repeatedly. So if it has found a magic bullet there, it will also feel encouraged that if America and all the others, Pakistan says many countries, had approached it to, cool down the temperatures, it will keep on demanding more and more, whether it is, with regard to the Waters Treaty or something else.
Right. And with that, I'll come to the next question, which is the Indus Water Treaty. Now, it is when first it was said that India will keep it under abeyance. People said that it is just a notional step. Doesn't mean anything. It would make a dent into Pakistan for the next 20 years. However, I was researching and I found out that over the last decades, there have been three very important projects that India tried to make, and they were legitimate based on the treaty. And they were the Wular project, the Baglihar project, and the Kishanganga project. And every time Pakistan went to the International Tribunal to delay it, finally, some of them were cleared, but the delaying actually made the whole thing impossible, and it made a lot of losses for India. Right now, how do you think that India can circumvent that international tribunal when they are talking about doing way more than what was even agreed in the treaty that is completely stopping that water? How do you think India can actually make that work?
Let me give you a little background, because there's another book of mine, Where Borders Bleed, where I've written a chapter on the Indus Waters Treaty, and where I have described how India was financially blackmailed into signing that treaty by America through the World Bank. This was long time in making, starting from 1953 onwards, but the flashpoint reached in 1960 when India was having financial difficulties. And the American ambassador based in Pakistan sent back a telegram to Washington, which I quoted, saying that both Pakistan and India are facing financial difficulties, but India's case is particularly desperate. This is the time we should teach Pandit Nehru, the rules of international behavior and get him to sign the Waters Treaty. Now, in the history of the world, there has never been a treaty as generous as Indus Waters Treaty, where a country is virtually made to give almost the entire waters of 6 rivers. We've got 20%, but that amounts to nothing for a country the size of India. The entire waters of 6 rivers to the downstream country, in this case, Pakistan. Not only that, at that time when we were facing financial difficulties, the treaty also ensured that India gave 68 million pounds, in today's terms, 2 billion pounds, to Pakistan so that it could construct more irrigation canals and dams. So
that is because 3 of the rivers came into India. That is why, and because all those 5 rivers didn't go to Pakistan, 3 of them came to India. That's why there was a deal about giving that money to Pakistan.
No. All 6 rivers flow from India into Pakistan. 3 rivers called the Western rivers. The other 3 are called Eastern rivers. The Eastern rivers have very little water flow. Out of those 3 rivers, we could get some water. The other 3 rivers, the Western rivers, we could get no water according to the treaty. They are the ones where water gushes like a fountain. So the unfortunate part is that the treaty does not even cater for normal things like population growth, industrial requirements, agricultural requirements, or the fact that in climate change, the glaciers which feed rivers with water are melting. So, for example, if they said that 100 million cubic feet of water must flow to Pakistan in 1960, if the glacier gives only 10 million cubic feet, how can India provide 100 million cubic feet? So it was an unrealistic uh, and very, very one-sided treaty, which India had to sign on a blank paper.
But isn't it said that even that water which is actually given to India, India is unable to use because it has not put in the infrastructure to use it. So anyway, we are giving away more water than what is legitimately ours. So we have not actually used, we are not using it anyways.
Yeah, because of the reasons you have outlined right in the beginning, that 3 or 4, actually it is 4 dams we were constructing for using those waters. Pakistan objected to each one of them. So those projects were delayed. Some of them are held up even now.
Yes.
Because we were being very disciplined and we were being, very careful that we should not go against the letter and spirit of Indus Waters Treaty. When the there's no law governing national waters till now.
So do you think that it is okay for India to just flout it now and there would be no repercussions of it at all?
India is a sovereign country.
No, but international treaties are international treaties, right? So,
but there's no international treaty. There's no law governing a treaty like this. So if there is no law, and as I explained to you the background, World Bank did not have the mandate in 1960 to act as a mediator. India was just fooled and as I said, financially blackmailed into signing something which it should not have signed.
So you are saying that this is actually not a very watertight international law-based treaty which has to be done in terms of an international repercussions if it is flouted at all. It is just a mediation that was done, and it is India's prerogative to do as it pleases.
In fact, the World Bank president, who was recently interviewed on a
Ajay
channel,
Banga, yeah, I saw. He said
exactly the same thing. And to give an example of USA and Russia have 2 arms control treaties, which America abrogated without so much as informing anyone or without so much as caring about the treaties being inviolable and so on, and that there being repercussions and so on. India is the only country in the world which is so moralistic that before taking one step, it thinks as to what the other person will think if I take the right foot forward or left foot forward first. That attitude has to go.
I think that's a very interesting point, because perhaps to some extent it worked for India because India gave a very non-threatening image of itself by trying to honor most of the laws and most of the being very benevolent all this while. But yeah, if we have to take certain steps, you can take, and you cannot be blackmailed by Pakistan at this time. So it is interesting to know that you think that it is a clear way for India to actually do as it pleases within this water.
One thing, firstly, I was the first one in India, and I think perhaps in the world, to write about Indus Waters Treaty by giving the background, by digging up the secret telegrams from American, I think, Congress and so on. Our problem is that we are reticent. Whether it is Kashmir or Indus Waters Treaty, we in India have been hesitant to explain our case and to reach out to the world in a manner that others do. And I'm not talking about Pakistan. Pakistan is aggressive. Pakistan is loudmouth. Pakistan does not care whether it is being too abrasive. Pakistan just goes on repeating the same thing, that we are not a terror state, we didn't sponsor this terror act, India did not give us evidence, we are the original owners of Kashmir, as Trump says, that this dispute goes
1,000 years.
back for 1,000 years, forgetting that Pakistan was illegally created in 1947.
Right. I would like to ask you this now. Now that the ceasefire happened, both Pakistan and India are claiming victory. Pakistan, all over their media, it is that, oh, we won this war, and India also same thing. Do you think, I mean, nobody wins a war these days, but do you think India has been successful in showing to the world at this time that there is a genuine terrorism that is emanating from Pakistan? And it is a problem for not just India, but for the rest of the world, and especially the picture that British High Commissioner to UK showed about that Rauf Azhar, who was standing with the whole army behind. It was condemned by Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street journalist Daniel Pearl's father, and said, "What are you mourning?" So, do you think India has been able to project that to the world much better, that there is a problem of terrorism that is coming out from Pakistan? Or do you think Pakistan has been more successful in internationalizing the Kashmir issue to the world with this war?
About the Indian High Commissioner in London showing that photograph, it was also showed in other places. What people are not remarking is the fact that this is the first time Pakistan is telling the world. After all, Pakistan never admitted Osama bin Laden lives in Pakistan. Pakistan never admitted Hafiz Saeed lives in Pakistan or Dawood Ibrahim lives in Pakistan. This is the first time I have known that not only were Pakistani terrorists there in that picture, mourning the dead, but there was the entire military brass, the administration, the police, top leaders, they were all there. So that distinction, or that at least the facade of denial, has been blown away. Now Pakistan says, and it says it to the world, that we don't care. They are our boys. We have nurtured them, we support them, we finance them. And if they have been killed, we are going to be there at their funeral to help with you and to help with your morality. So that is the message which is coming out.
Do you think it resonated with the world? The world took notice of it enough? Because during that interview, actually, the anchor said that, okay, we can't, actually, we cannot corroborate this at all, whether this is correct or not. Do you think the world actually believes that it actually happened?
Well, the part of the world which will start believing is when things happen to them. For example, in Germany, there have been incidents of...
It has been happening with them all these years. Since 9/11, it has continuously been happening.
So America has got some hang of it and some pain of it. Other countries are still, not quite conscious of it. Maybe some. Well, Poland, for example, does not allow a particular type of people to come into its country because it does not want to suffer that damage. So the world will have to be told about the likely consequences if it pretends, or if it continues to pretend that it is not seeing terror.
Do you think Pakistan has also internationalized the Kashmir issue at this time through this war?
That's its intention, no doubt about it.
But do you think they have been successful?
No, in the sense that it wants to get its way on Kashmir issue. India has always maintained, as you mentioned at the beginning of our talk, that we do not need an interlocutor. If there has to be a marriage, we do not need a third partner. Like Diana said very famously, that
three of us in the marriage.
So that spoils the show. And that
wonderfully put. Wonderfully put. No one wants that. It's always trouble if you have three of you in an issue. Wonderful. So I would like to ask you here in terms of international support for India at the moment. Now, India has just signed a very historic free trade deal with UK. And UK is looking at a huge market with a huge tariff concessions for their export. There is no bigger market than India after America, frankly speaking, because there's a spectrum of people with different uh, 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 money bags in India. At the same time, China, as we all know, has been good friends with Pakistan, but these are very unusual times with a huge tariff war going on between China and America. Do you think it is so unusual that there could be a friendship, that China would see a greater merit to side with India at this time for their trade requirements? And do you think India should actually uh, trust China and make that friendship?
Well, China and India both are civilizational states. They are the only two continuous civilizations in the world. Others have more or less scattered, disappeared, or dissipated. These are the only two civilizations which have held their own from 5,000 years back. So it would be a pity if we go divergent ways for strategic reasons, let's say. China feels that it is
So
still
you are
the
saying India and China should make friendship?
ideally, yes. But between ideally and realistically, there can be a wide gap. And that wide gap is called Pakistan, because China feels that it must stand by its iron brother like Pakistan, whatever the cost. Now, that cost eventually could lead China. It has not realized that. But on the other hand, India is a huge market, the world's largest market today, with 1.45 billion people. In fact, I tweeted recently talking about the riches that while India has multi billionaires, the only billionaire Pakistan seems to have is Dawood Ibrahim.
So you think that there could be a difference, that a shift that the world could see in terms of uh, uh, a marriage between India and China, it's shifting, the relationship shifting between India and China, and a whole new dynamics can emerge out of that.
Well, I hope so, because the world would be a better place, happier place, more prosperous place, just like it became after the Second World War. We need not have a war between us. We can, uh, in fact, settle our differences like mature nations can and should. Uh, we have issues with China, but I hope China does not see India through the prism of Pakistan like it has been seen for the last many decades, because that is the spoiler of the show. Uh,
Okay. But you think it can change over time? That's very
it can
interesting.
it can change over time if China shows accommodation and realism on the boundary issue.
Hmm. That's true. I would like to ask you one more thing, because I saw your interview today in NDTV, and you were saying that India should try to take POK, that is the Pak occupied Kashmir, or Azad Kashmir, as they say. Do you think it is India should, or India could, or India should use any bandwidth to actually pursue that? And what benefit will India have if it at all does that?
No, I didn't say that. I mean, I hope India gets POK because that is its right. I didn't say it in this particular interview. Uh, I have written that in Where Borders Bleed and given reasons why POK, including Gilgit Baltistan, should be with India. And I hope one day it comes about. But at the moment, I think uh, there are far more uh, problems between the two nations for them to start another war on this issue. A time will come when Parliament has passed. Our Parliament has passed two resolutions that the entire POK, entire Jammu and Kashmir is ours.
Right. I'll come to the very last question, and that is, do you think that from here on, terrorism is something that India would have to live with for the rest of its life. And this are going to carry on forever. Or do you think there is anything at all that can be done which for which a lasting peace can ever come to India and a safety can come to India?
If a neighborhood thug threatens you and you keep on succumbing, then he gets used to carrying on with that habit, whether in terms of money or anything else, and comes to you every week and demands his pound of flesh. But there comes a time when you say that enough is enough. I have to get up. If I can't do it myself, maybe get others from the neighborhood to stand united and resist this fellow. Otherwise, it becomes, besides the humiliation of that experience, it also becomes a sort of a mental block in terms of that person's advancement, in terms of that person's peace of mind. So it is the same with countries, that we have been led for the last 35 years. And starting with 1993, the Bombay terror attack, which people of this generation have forgotten. Bombay or Mumbai now does not look the same. First, it was a very happy city. It was a city on the go. It is still a city on the go, but it is not happy anymore. People look over their shoulders because after 93, the 2008 26/11 happened. In between, there were train blasts which killed, in one particular case, 260 people. So Pakistan is selectively targeting its terror to lead India by choosing Mumbai because it's the financial capital of India, by choosing Kashmir because it wants to grab yet another piece of territory there, by choosing Punjab because Punjabis were the main components of Indian army, one of the principal components of Indian army, and it wanted to have trouble in Punjab also. So how long can you let Pakistan get its way and in a manner that it hurts India's rise? Because India is a country on the go. India is a country that the world is looking to, because it's the next, as Swedes say, Valhalla is the next heaven. So when and if it becomes heaven is a different story, but that is the aspiration of the today's youth in India. Pakistan has ruined itself because of its generals and because of its corrupt politicians. So if the youth of Pakistan, and there were some signs that youth was sort of coming up and demanding a new Pakistan, but that lasted only a little while. It has fizzled away because of the fear of the army. But if they gather courage and confront this monster, then I think there's a future for them.
Frankly speaking, I don't believe that population can rise and change a country. Otherwise, North Korea would have changed. I don't believe North Korean people like what they have for a country. People cannot go beyond a certain thing to change their government. But assuming it continues like this, do you see any possibility of India having a long-term peace and safety?
That's a very, very deep question. And in fact, there's also the subject of another book which I was published recently, my latest book called Autocrats. And I found that someone I admired as a philosopher, Plato, long back had said that democracy turns into autocracy, or something to that effect. So unfortunately, that is the way of the world, that people, for some reason, are enamored by strong leaders, be it Trump or Mussolini or Hitler, and in this case, the army chiefs of Pakistan. And people do rise occasionally. They've risen in our times also. But after a while, there's a nostalgia, that time when we had a strong leader, trains were running on time. But that's an artificial high, but people like that high. After all, drugs are an artificial high, but some people like those highs. So that is the way of the world.
So in other words, I also believe realistically, perhaps we would have to live with this and we have to just manage this problem with Pakistan over and over again. And perhaps it's something that we have to just be more cautious in terms of our defense to make things better for India. Would you agree?
This reminds me of a song in Sound of Music, what to do with a problem called Maria. So we can paraphrase it, what to do with a problem called Pakistan. In fact, there's no solution to it.
This is very interesting. And I'll just end with one anecdote about a story that I have recently. As you know, I live in UK and I was going in a taxi and the taxi driver happened to be Pakistani and he said, "Oh, madam, you and I, we are having a war." And then he said that, "You know what, your country is making a huge mistake by not doing a referendum in Kashmir, because not one Kashmiri or one Muslim would want to vote to go to Pakistan. And if you actually did a vote in Pakistan as well, people would want to actually vote to become part of India." And in fact, I was seeing a Pashtun, certain people were saying, "We want this war to go full-fledged and India to take over the whole place because we have no future in Pakistan." So I believe there people actually don't like what's going on, but people do not have a choice in most cases.
Unfortunately, that's true. They do not have a choice. But then it's not the stars they can blame all the time. They have to do something themselves.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for this wonderful conversation. As usual, it's so profound, so wise, coming from a lot of experience, a lot of observation that you have had, which most of us do not have. And hence this huge instinct and this huge understanding, a huge sense that you have of what's about to happen and what's really going on. Thanks so much for making the time and coming to this interview. It's great speaking.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be on your show, and I wish you the very best. Thank you.